Hi, my name is Gil Robertson, president of the African American Film Critics Association. Today, we are thrilled to be talking to the very lovely Emma McDonald, who is the star of the AMC hit show Moonhaven. We are going to kick things off by introducing you to the AAFCA members who are on the call today, beginning with our facilitator, Katia Woods in Philadelphia, Carolyn Hines in Toronto, Kim Singleton in New York, New York, Dana Abercrombie in New York, New York, Janita Davis in Indiana, and Nancy Green in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm going to let you ladies do what you do so well, and I will see you on the other side.
The technology to save our world is coming. Over the last century, we have turned a corner. We are on the verge of the climate that no longer seeks to destroy us. The mission of Moonhaven isn't simply about solving the crushing problems of our planet. It's about solving us.
Welcome to Moonhaven.
Moonhaven isn't a people. It's a purpose.
It takes a while to get used to this.
I get that this is supposed to be our future. But you and I know, darkness finds a way.
Hasn't been a murder here in a long time. Now there are two.
Earth extremists have found a way to get an agent on the moon.
The Earthers will kill us all!
There are Earthers amongst us causing chaos. And your pilot is involved.
Bella helps us.
She's not what she seems to be.
We don't survive in spite of our wounds. We survive because of them.
We, all of us, have been raised to believe in this mission with all of our hearts and minds. If we cannot heal the dark heart of Bella Sway, how can we ever hope to succeed?
I don't know who to trust.
Trust me.
Hello, Emma. Kim Singleton, Considered Blacklit, a TV show and podcast out of New York City. And I am such a sci-fi head, so this series is right up my alley. Yes. One of the reasons I love science fiction so much is because we use our imagination to show what is possible in the future. We're just waiting for science to catch up. For instance, in Star Trek, the little tricorder is really my version of a smartphone. So my question to you is, what kind of technology in the series that we don't have now that you see as a possibility once the science catches up?
We have all sorts of technology in it. We have, one of my favorites props is I've got this little music device which I spin. And I mean, Bella Sway, the character I play, has a really eclectic taste in music. So we see a lot of that. We see a lot to do with plants as well, and really interesting growing styles, which is stunning. The architecture as well is pretty beautiful. And obviously my spaceship, Cat, has to be my favorite. It's Bella's home. I spent a lot of time in there, and the way I fly my spaceship as well with these rings, I don't think we've seen anything quite like that before. So I got to take those home with me and practice on my sofa. I got to create my own G-force, which was sort of pressing my feet firmly into the ground and like, but yes, loads of technology. There's a lot. And there's some brilliant Zoom calls. Well, I suppose Moonhaven's version of Zoom calls, just like we're on now. And I think that scene itself is a highlight for me. It's great.
Great. Well, great job. I love your character. Continue the good work. Thanks.
Hey, Dana Abercrombie, the Coalition. Thank you so much for joining us, Emma. This was really a lot of fun. And what I love is because Bella kind of comes from Earth, her styles is a lot different. And so what was really interesting is watching how she reacts with the police department there. And so I was wondering, there's a lot of strengths and weaknesses that you guys both have, but how would you say they complement each other in this season?
A really interesting question. They do rub each other up the wrong way sometimes. You're absolutely right. But I think they grow to love each other and their differences, and they learn so much from one another. And they're not at all what Bella's expecting. She's expecting a straight up cops. And instead they work, I suppose, on trying to sort grief out and working with the living and helping you heal, which I find fascinating. At first, Bella kind of like bit of an eye roll, kind of keep your distance, back off, don't interfere with what I'm doing. But yeah, you're right. They learn so much from each other, and it's interesting to see how they develop their relationship over the series.
Hi, Emma. Thank you so much for talking with us today. Caroline Hines for Here's What Happened in Carolyn Talks podcast. So I really love sci-fi. I'm a huge sci-fi nerd. And one of the things I've always loved about sci-fi is how writers and directors and cast are able to intertwine a lot of stories, a lot of deep stories into the element of sci-fi. And I find for Moonhaven, to me, one of the main themes is there's grief, of course, but then there's also forgiveness and healing and identity with motherhood and parenthood. So I want you to talk a bit about Bella's relationship, because I kind of see her as an intermediary between Io and Earth, and she acts almost like a surrogate mediator for all of them, because she herself doesn't have a connection with either Earth or Io intrinsically. So talk a bit about that character development and how all that ties into the story of Moonhaven.
Yeah, she does. She likes to say that she stands apart. She's not alone, but she likes to stand apart from things. She's a bit of a watcher. And you're right, she doesn't have a great relationship with her mother, but she does kind of yearn for that at the same time. And there's beautiful relationships as well that you see later on in the series with some of the other characters and their own mums, and the relationships they have on the moon are so different than the families that we have down here. And because of that, they see one another as family, all of them. Which strengthens every bond that you have. I think we can learn a lot from them. But yes, it's really fascinating that. And I'm a huge sci-fi nerd as well. I love the world building aspect of it. And I think what Peter Rocco, our showrunner, has done so brilliantly here is focus not only on the world, but the people. And so it's a really character-led and driven series. And you really want to find out what's happening. And like you say, you learn about the world through Bella. You see it through her eyes. She is an outsider on the moon. She comes from Earth, and she's a reluctant hero. She doesn't want to be there. So you find out about the moon, their culture and their ways through her eyes. And I think that is really fascinating. I'm so excited to see what people make of her and make of the world.
Yeah, Io is not what I thought it was going to be at all. So I can't wait to see what happens later on in the season. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, it takes you on such a journey, even reading it myself, turning through the script, and each episode, because we only got them sort of one at a time. I had no idea what was coming. And to the point where you read it and I got goose pimples in the later episodes. So I cannot wait to see what you make of those as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jonita Davis from the Black Cape. I really love the show. And I really love Bella and how you think she's one way and there's so many layers. There's so many, I mean, you've got a warrior, you've got a hero, you've got an anti-hero, you've got all these other family issues, and she's a hard person to describe. So I was going to ask you, Emma, if for people who are coming into this show, what characters out there in the sci-fi world would you say compares to Bella?
Interesting. You have, I suppose, Ray, who's also a complete badass, a bit of a loner as well at the start, but wanting to have connection with someone, making the best of what they have, thinking on their feet, fast with their hands, a big heart and a vulnerability and softness there as well, and a huge loyalty. And I think Bella is all of those things. I think they would get on like a house on fire as well. But yeah, she is hard to explain. And I think she goes on such a journey over the course of the series. She is a completely different person by the end, but still has those eccentricities about her that I think you grow to love early on. And she has a wicked sense of humor, I think, that dry, cynical wit, which I think is a lot of fun.
Yeah, she is. And she's a completely different character from the pilot episode to episode 3. I mean, I'm just saying that. Yeah. But Ray is, I think she and Ray together would burn the planet down. So I'm just saying.
Let's
Thank
do
you.
it. We have to make that happen, please.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Nancy Green with Film Critique. And I wanted to know if you could go into talking a little bit more about your characters' different interactions and relationships, because that is one thing that I found different. You know, she stands apart, but not alone. But it seems like her relationships are pretty, they're pretty intimate. They're pretty very caring. So I wanted to know if you could go into that and sort of how she approaches those things differently.
Yes, that's absolutely right. She says, yeah, I stand apart, not alone. And I think she's found that way of life through, I suppose, through her military background and losing the people that are close to her, and also not having the best relationship with her mother, but really wanting that. So I think it's a protective thing that she doesn't want people to get close to her. And also maybe through her military background, in that when people have got close to her, she has put them in danger. So I think that speaks of her own vulnerability and her own care. And yeah, I mean, the connections that she forms with the different Mooners are beautiful. And there's a really special one with, I don't know if I can say this without giving too much away, but with Dom's family. I think that's an interesting one to watch. And in the first episode, there's a scene in it. We had to film that scene multiple times because Emma McDonald kept crying. And you're like, Emma, we've got to do it again because you're crying and you can't cry. But it was just so beautiful to film. And you probably know which one I'm referring to, maybe. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what people make of that. Kadeem as well, who plays Arlo, I love him. I think he's a brilliant actor and just the most fantastic human being. And he said on day one on the read through, he said, "Hey, I'm your big brother on this," and we form such a strong bond. And I think it's fascinating to watch the journey that those two go on as well. Obviously, Dom, we had such great time on and off set, and we go on in this big epic adventure later in the series, and that was just wonderful. And to see how his character changes as well through spending time with Bella. They rub off on each other in the best way towards the end. And Joe, we just had a fantastic time. And everyone, she forms strong connections with everyone. And I don't want to chat too long about it because but I could.
Thank you. It's really enjoyable.
Thank you.
I am Katia Woods, Cup of Soul Show and the Philadelphia Tribune. Let's talk a little bit about your character discovering things as being not as they are. There's like a lot of work to be done that this community is very cohesive and an example of living. But she senses from the beginning that all is not as what it is. Talk about that, because she's trying to process it, but stuff keeps happening to her that she doesn't quite put all the pieces together. And what was that like? Because everyone around her is like kind of like in on the thing, except her.
That was incredibly fun to play with. And she comes at everything with her own cynicism. And I think she wants it to work, and she does realize that Moonhaven is the only hope for planet Earth. So she wants it to work, but she can't help but sort of pick at it. Because, I mean, they are a wonderful group of people, but they are also fairly strange. And I think as an audience, it's nice to see it through her eyes, because she doesn't buy into it. And it's so different than what she has been living through. So it was fun to play with, and to play with the humor of it as well. And see how she then does begin to buy into it and want to get behind it, and everything that she can do to keep it running smoothly and working. But to start at it from a point of view of don't come anywhere near me, to really fighting for it. But yes, being a reluctant hero as well at the same time. It was a lot of fun.
So we've only seen 4 episodes, but there's definitely, in my opinion, a war brewing up. You have the Earthers who are like, we sent you up there to fix our problems. And then the Mooners are like, you know what, we're comfortable. We're not going back to that cesspool. But there was one statement that was said, I'm paraphrasing, but it's like, it won't be bombs of violence that destroys us. It will be doubt. Tell us what your perspective is on how that applies to society today.
First off, Peter Rocco is a poet. What a beautiful line. And it resonates wonderfully with our time now. But yeah, I think it's just speaks of humanity, doesn't it? And the choices that we make, and not learning from our own mistakes a lot of the time and repeating patterns of behavior, which is what IO is seeking to sort out right from the off. But yeah, Moonhaven is all about love and healing and nature. So yeah, I suppose it's everything that undercuts that, and everything that sort of comes from the earth.
Yeah, thank you. There's so many layers to it. I think that's why it's such a great series.
Oh,
Thanks.
to spend time in Peter's mind and to ask questions of him was just invaluable. And I can't wait to see where it goes. And it just makes, just expect the unexpected all the way through and you will not be disappointed.
No, thank you.
I was wondering, you kind of lightly touched upon this before about saying that you got the scripts like kind of one at a time. So as an actress kind of preparing for this role and probably doing the backstory, I don't know how you work on the character, but my question would be, how do you define the character and work on it, but only having one episode kind of in front of you, know what's going on? Do you build off of that, or do you just trust kind of the character's instincts?
I trust her instincts, and also Bella doesn't know where it's going. So it's actually kind of helpful not to know everything. So then when you are responding to something, that's authentic, because while Emma was surprised, Bella was also surprised at what happened as we went along. So that was actually really useful. And Peter would occasionally give you tiny little nuggets of information. You'd be like, oh, what? No. So that was also fun to play with, having some things, but not having everything. But yes, I would go home each day and I would practice my fights on my own in my living room. I would get my little flying rings out. I would learn my lines for the next day. And I would have an open dialogue with Peter, with our wonderful directors and cast, and play things through. And just keep playing. That when I'm having fun, I think I'm doing the best work. So just keeping that in mind and fresh.
Thank you.
So another thing that's really interesting about Moonhaven is the concept of opposites. So I find that there's a lot of opposites in the show. Like there's soft and hard, there's up and down. There's this constant discussion of if our Earth is up and down, if the moon is above or below. And then for Emma, she's kind of like the same thing. Whereas you talked about her progression as a character, where she kind of like gets closer to people. So she's getting softer, but she still has to maintain her harder edges so that she can fight, because she's a fighter. And then there's also the discussion of trust and doubt, all of these opposites. So I want you to talk a bit about going through the process of the show and filming the show and the characters of, like, as an actress working through these opposites, and also the training that you have to do as a fighter, but then also still be able to keep the emotionality of who Emma is, and then also who Bella is becoming as a character.
You're right, there's so much juxtaposition throughout it. And I think the main example of that is with the Earthers and the Mooners, the us and them, but trying to find sort of, I suppose, a place between them, because they all have to exist as one. But yeah, that was fun, finding her vulnerability, but also keeping her darkness and her detachment. But finding humor in it as well for me was really important, finding the light amongst the shade within it. As an actor, I think working with opposites and obstacles is always your friend. To be battling with something is when the most interesting work happens. And Peter provided us an absolute gift with Moonhaven as actors, because it is so character-led. And fighting, sorry. Sorry, I apologize. Yeah, with the fighting, we had an amazing stunt team. And every time I had with them, I loved it. And I had Krav Maga was my fighting style. I'm going to sneeze again. I'm so. Whereas the fighting of the Mooners was more like water, so that everything was trying to be fluid and not trying to hit, but to try and dodge and duck and dive. So even watching Bella fight with the Mooners is a battle of opposites, and really interesting to see how they interact in that style, because they have a real physical language. They embody their words. So yeah, that's a fun example of opposites. And Belle Williams, my stunt double, was brilliant. So working and learning from her was so much fun. And seeing how I progressed as time went on. Initially, it was quite difficult to pick up moves. And I wanted to dance them, which doesn't really work for Bella. You kind of want to hold, yeah. So learning to sort of develop that and harden my movements, yeah, was fascinating. And Vic Armstrong, who was Harrison Ford's stunt double, directed some of the fights in episodes 1 and 2. The best stuntman that has ever lived. And he said that I was like a Catwoman and that I took to it like a natural. So I will hold on to that for the rest of my life. Thank you, Vic Armstrong.
The language is interesting because I wasn't expecting the Shakespearean sort of language, but then also the modern language. So I love how that also plays into the whole characters. Thank you so much, and great show. I can't wait to see how everyone reacts to it, because I personally can't wait to see what happens, because episode 4 ended on a cliffhanger, which I did not appreciate, because it was like, no, I need to know what happens next.
Yes. No, it's interesting you mentioning the language, because I love that in other sci-fi, in the genre, like the development of a whole language and building that up. And not only do they have a written and spoken language, they have a physical language that has been made. Rasheen, who was our choreographer, I think it's just stunning how they move through dance and express themselves, and how that unifies them all. But yeah, the interplay between the earther sort of American colloquialism, and then Kadeem picking up on some of that as well later on in the episodes is just so much fun. But yeah, language is important within it.
Hi, Jonita Davis again from the Black Cape. You spoke about the stunts and the language. There seems to be a lot that you had to do to get ready to just even embody this character. I would love to hear about what your prep was like for, you know, getting ready to just don this role.
I had brilliant hair and makeup. I think that always helps, and costume into your physicality in terms of prep. So having the braids, having the shaved sides, developing that, seeing that I have a big scar on the side of my head, I was like, fantastic. That's really cool. I love that. Also having discussions with Peter and with Bridget and Crudy, our first 2 directors, and really chatting everything through, from her military background to the relationships that she has with people, or the lack thereof, her spaceship where she's most at home, the different props and things that she has as well, her love of music, a very eclectic music taste as well. So lots of discussions with other people, a lot of time spent on my own as well, because I lived on my own and I was right at the edge of a cliff, overlooking Bray and Greystones. I had a view of the sea, and it was very rural and detached, and I found that really helpful. And I would go for walks in the morning, and I would route. I'd take off my hat and my shoes, and I would stand in the darkness, looking out towards the sea, and I would just put my hands and my feet on the ground. And I found that really helpful to keep my grounding and my earthing. I do a lot of meditation as well, and that really helps. And I think thinking about the time that Bella would spend completely on her own in outer space, like you cannot be more far away from anyone. So kind of thinking about that quite a lot, chatting with Peter in every way I could. The thing really important to him was that she was a very old soul. She was young, but she'd lived so many lives. So thinking about that, thinking about my grandma as well, she's an important woman in my life, and my ancestors and everything. So I think I approached it from loads of different ways: spirituality, earth, costume, appearance, the outer things, but also the inner, and having that time on my own as well was really important.
It comes together brilliantly. And I hope you had your clothes on when you were standing in the grass with your toes.
Ooh, you're making a little reference there to, I did. I just had my bare feet and my bare hands. But yes, I was otherwise dressed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi again. One of the things I really liked about this show were the different types of technologies. And I wanted to know if you could go into the behind the scenes of working with these fake like they don't exist yet. So if you could talk about like what that was like and kind of imagining them as you're interacting and things like that.
Yeah, I found it fascinating. And I think it was interesting for me, particularly because I come from Earth in it, that they are all new to me as well. So, for example, I don't know if I can give, I'm giving stuff away. But Bella is a drug smuggler. And so she's smuggling drugs between Earth and the moon. So even the drugs that I was smuggling themselves, I found that fascinating. And the fact that they had to be made with wood because they don't have different composites and metals on the Earth. So even that, and I chatted endlessly to the art department as well about that, and the props and everything, that the gadgets that Bella has anyway are all with the metals and a sort of, I suppose, what we would typically picture when we think of sci-fi. So that I found really interesting. Things with the marbles as well, and just like little nods to something that we don't know. So it's not too far out of our imagination, but there's little things that make it slightly different and slightly special. So yeah, and yeah, the challenges, I suppose, of working with wood, and seeing how it came together as well in a CGI sense. So some things that I would be imagining in blue screen, and then actually seeing them realized in other departments. And fire, seeing how that worked, I found amazing, because you're imagining it at the time, but until you see it really play out, yeah, really interesting.
Thank you. Yeah, and one of the ones I really liked was the fire department, that tower that just sucked the fire out. I thought that was great, and I'm like, when are we going to have that technology? So
Peter's mind, and it's stunning, and it's kind of oddly moving at the same time, imagining that and experiencing that. So I loved for Bella that whenever anything happened, it was kind of a first, and that's quite special. And that's when you see, I think, a softer side of her as well, where she can't help but the wall come down for a moment and fully appreciate what is in front of her.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the things is this is a very physical role. She's having to fight a lot of people. How did you prepare for that aspect of the character?
I celebrated that aspect of the character. Oh my gosh, was that so much fun. Me and Dom would go to the gym every week, just us two, and lift heavy things, and that was brilliant. I'm still working on chin-ups. That is my goal for this year, to be able to do chin-ups. Press-ups I have now got, and I can do those. But I loved that. I loved being physical. But not only being physical, I think she's so smart in other ways as well. She's so switched on. She knows how to use her mind and her body, and her soul. Yeah, I loved that. I loved working with the stunt team. I loved training, going to the gym a lot. I did a lot of swimming as well in it, which I really enjoyed. And yeah, rowing, all sorts. I love the challenge of it.
So there's so many layers packed into your character of Bella, and I enjoy the series as those layers are peeled and seeing how she evolves. My question to you is, what aspects of Bella's personality do you identify with yourself?
I think I sometimes do have a dryness in my character. I do like that side of sense of humor. But for me, it was kind of a lot of opposites. I think I'm very dog-like in my energy. I am very enthusiastic and I'm quite silly. So to sort of pare that down and kind of find this cooler energy that's kind of backward leaning and more cat-like, I really enjoyed. And to take my time with things as well. I'm kind of like go, go, go energy, whereas she kind of sits back. Even that image of like film noir, like a cigarette sort of out of the mouth, kind of cool. So that was a challenge, but also a joy, to be sort of back-footed instead of front-footed all the time, and to think with her fists, but also with her head. Yeah, what similarities do we have? Her loyalty, her love, her vulnerability at times, her letting her hair down, her running. I love to run and be physical in that sense. I enjoyed all those running montages that we did and channeling Tom Cruise. That was really fun. Her love of food. I love food. I love eating. Anytime there was a prop on set, it would be in my mouth, if it was edible. So like the mince, just all sorts, the grapes, her playfulness as well that comes out at times, particularly when she's on her own or doesn't think that anyone's watching. Yeah, and having firm friends and holding those close.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Emma, we thank you for your time today. As you can see, we love this show and we're looking forward to seeing much, much, much more of it.
Mm.
On behalf of the world's largest group of Black film and TV critics, thank you for participating in AAFCA Roundtables.
It has been an absolute honor and a joy to chat with each and every one of you. Thank you for taking time to watch the series and for loving it as much as I have. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. See you soon.
See you soon. Thank you so much, guys.